What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 4 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop, back with your running back preview for week number 4. If you missed it, go back, check out the quarterback preview. I talked through all the best and worst quarterback options for this coming week. But let's talk running backs. Again, 3 games this week due to the Elks COVID situation. We've got Friday night, Montreal and Hamilton. Saturday, we've got Ottawa, BC. And Sunday, we've got Winnipeg and Calgary. The running back position is a bit of an interesting position to talk about because we're seeing week after week there aren't a lot of great options available. In fact, if you didn't get one of the top 3 running backs last week, you got less than 10 points out of them, which is certainly not ideal and certainly not the production you're looking for. So it presents an interesting position to talk about because I don't think there's a lot of surefire options. I am cautiously optimistic on a lot of them, but it's almost a position where part of me thinks, should you just spend as little as possible and save your money for elsewhere where you're going to get the big point getters? That is certainly something I'm considering myself coming into week number 4. But let's take a look at the options. There's a couple I do really like, though. And it starts off with William Stanback of the Montreal Alouettes. 13.7 points a game so far through 2 games for him. 12.7. So not a bad floor for him. He has been one of the highest point producers when it comes to running backs. He's put up at least 10 through 2 weeks, and he really hasn't gotten going in the passing game so far for the Alouettes, and I think that's a big thing there where we're just waiting for him to get involved there because he did a lot in 2019, and I think it will come for him, and he's putting up solid yardage each and every game, and he should be one of the top running backs in the league. So I really like William Stanback. He comes against a Hamilton defense that's allowed an average of 14.8 points against running backs so far. The Bombers, Brady Oliveira, put up 15.9 on them. 15.7, sorry. And Saskatchewan put up 13.9 in week number 2. So I like the option of Stanback. He comes in at $7,755. So one of the top priced options at running back. But if you're looking for consistency and you're looking for a floor on point totals, Stanback's got to be the guy that's going to get that for you. So he's my favorite option for week number 4. I also, depending on whether he starts or not, I really like Andrew Harris if he can be in the lineup this week for Winnipeg. He started practicing last week. Didn't seem like he was ready to go, so he sat that game out again. But could he be back this week? We won't know for sure probably until Saturday with the game being on Sunday. But check the injury reports, check the depth charts. He's pricey, $10,113. Look, it's not easy to fit Harris in your lineup. But, the Bombers' rushing game has disappeared the past 2 weeks against the Argos. They didn't run the ball heavily in the win in week 2. They didn't run the ball much at all in week number 3 with Brady Oliveira back there. So I think getting Andrew Harris back is just going to inject so much life into this offense. And we've seen what he's capable of putting up those 20-point performances. We know he's a guy that's going to get the ball thrown his way and get a couple catches that way. He's going to get the rushing yards. He's going to get the touchdowns. And believe me, seeing how Andrew Harris, really gets himself pumped up for games, I think after having not played for 2 years, after having missed the first couple of games of the season, if he's in the lineup, he's going to be fired up to play, and he's going to have himself a very fine day against the Calgary defense that's kind of middle of the pack against running backs, 14.7 points average per game. They've also given up at least 10 in every game and as high as 18.8. So I think there's a bit of room maybe to run against Calgary, especially if Andrew Harris is in the lineup. Looking at the options, I'm considering, but I'm not 100% sold on. Sticking with the Bombers, it's Brady Oliveira. $4,500. He's averaged 8.5 points a game. Looked so promising for him in that week 1 start where he put up 15.7, ran for over 120 yards, didn't pick up the touchdown, but just a couple carries in weeks 2 and 3 and no real point totals to come out of that. Gives me a little bit of caution. I expect them to adjust from last week, go a little more heavy on the run, and get him more involved if he's playing. So he is an intriguing option to me for a bounce back week because I think that offense is going to be better this week. I think they're going to be rolling more plays his way, or whoever, Harris or Oliveira, whoever starts their way. So I could see a bounce back week there. So I'm cautiously optimistic on Brady Oliveira at 4,500. But the last 2 weeks definitely put me, a bit of caution in that regard. 2 other options that I think are interesting plays for week number 4 are Kadeem Carey and Ante Milanovic-Leader out in Calgary. These are 2 guys that last week I warned to stay away from because they were splitting the time. Neither was putting up fantastic performances, and neither seemed to be worth it to put in your lineup. But what does Kadeem Carey do? He comes out and puts up the top running back performance of the week, picks up 2 touchdowns, 60-something yards on the ground, and puts up 22.1 points against Montreal last week. With that, he's averaging 13.7 a game, comes at $6,429. That's not bad production necessarily on average for that point total. But which Kadeem Carey are we going to see? The one that put up, under 11 points each game in the first 2 weeks, or the one that put up 20 in week number 3? I think it will be dependent on the touchdowns for him. But with a rookie quarterback, maybe, they get in the red zone, they're leaning more towards a guy like Kadeem Carey. So I like that option. And surprisingly, I like the option of a running back against Winnipeg in CFL Fantasy now this season. Last season, it was an absolute no to pick a running back against the Bombers because you couldn't run against them. It seemed that way in week number 1 as well, but in back-to-back weeks, the Argos have put up 20-point performances from their running backs against this Bombers defense. They've given up, they average the 4th highest running back totals against them in the league right now. So I like the potential option of the Kadeem Carey against the Bombers, especially with a young quarterback that could be leaning on him a little more heavily. And for the same reason, I like Ante Milanovic-Leader. $3,295. He will be listed as the backup running back. He generally gets, a couple rushing plays, couple throws his way. Not so much in week 3 where he put up just 1.3 points against Montreal, but 7.3 in week 1 against Toronto, 9 in week 2 against BC. So he's averaging 5.9. That's not a great point total. The reason I like him as a potential option is mostly just the cheaper salary. He is one of the cheaper running backs on the board. And for the same reason, is Calgary going to try to exploit this suddenly shaky Bombers run defense? Are they going to lean heavily on Carey and Milanovic-Leader? Are they going to have a bunch of dump passes from Jake Maier in their direction? So I'm considering putting him in my lineup, a backup running back, just because all of the starters have not been putting up the point totals we expect to see from them. So if I can save some cash there and spend it elsewhere, that is an intriguing option to me. Why are they both in the caution and not in the yes, put them in your lineup section? It's simply because, well, if they're both getting the ball, again, I could see them taking, points away from one another if they decide to lean them both. So I do like them, but I'm cautious on them. I also like the potential of them learning from what Toronto did against the Bombers last week, which is use the dual back system. So I could see them splitting time very evenly, which, if you're spending $3,200 on Milanovic-Leader, that's not bad for you. Not as ideal if you're spending more on Kadeem Carey, but 2 potential running back options out there in Calgary for week 4. Looking around the rest of the matchups, Shaq Cooper, I've praised him all season long, all preseason long. that this guy is going to have a great season for BC. And he finally got into his first game last week and just put up 35 rushing yards only on, I believe, 6 carries against the Edmonton Elks. A disappointing performance for him. I'm expecting a bounce back day, and he faces an Ottawa team that's given up the most points against running backs so far this year. Running backs have averaged 21.3 points, due in large part to James Wilder's big game in week 1. But the running backs in week number 2 or in week 3 for Saskatchewan put up a combined 13.3 against them as well. So there's room to run the ball against Ottawa, especially if, their offense isn't out on the field. So BC's offense should be out there quite a bit. Maybe they get a lead. Maybe they start running the ball down the stretch. I'm expecting a bounce back game from Shaq Cooper this week. He is not going to put up just a 3.5 point performance again like he did in week 3. So I'm cautiously optimistic on him. I'm not putting him in the lock category just because he didn't get a whole lot of usage last week. He didn't get a whole lot of production in that usage. But part of me chalks that up to maybe, easing him back into the lineup a little bit. So I do like Cooper as an option for week 4, for those reasons I've mentioned. But, cautious based on how he performed last week. Sean Thomas Erlington out in Hamilton, another guy I was high on in the preseason after what he did in limited action in 2019. $5,408, 2 games played so far, 8.4 point average, nothing to write home about. That whole Hamilton offense just has not gotten anything going. They have struggled greatly in the passing game and the rushing game. The offensive line has struggled. They've been missing a couple of receivers due to injury. They had the bye week to prepare to come back and try to get their first win of the season. They had the bye week to get healthy, and I think that's going to give a nice bounce back week for the Ticats. And I think if they're going to get things going, they need to get the ball going on the ground as well to give some time for Mazzoli to complete some of those passes. So I think there could be a bounce back here. He faces Montreal's defense that in 2 games has averaged 18.5 fantasy points against. So there's some room to run against Montreal. They're the 3rd highest total in that regard. And I think there's potential there. The reason I'm cautionary on him, again, he hasn't proven the performances yet this year. Also remains to be seen, will Don Jackson be healthy and get back into the lineup and take some of the carries in that regard? So, it's potentially a risky play. He might not put the points up for you again. But if Hamilton's offense gets rolling again, Sean Thomas Erlington is an intriguing option there. And finally, in the cautionary potential pick regard, let's take a quick look at Ottawa. You got Timothy Flanders, $3,923. He is one of the cheaper starting running back options. He did leave the game due to injury in week 3, though. So he missed practice, I believe, the first day so far this week. So he may not get into the starting lineup. He hasn't done anything spectacular when he's been in that lineup. You can say the same for most of Ottawa's offense. Just a 5.2 point average. I like him, again, mostly for the cheaper salary. I think there's room to run against BC, who's averaged 2nd most points on average against with 19.1 so far through the 3 games they've played. So maybe they got to lean on the running backs, I think, to help Matt Nichols out, especially with the offensive line being so shaky for the Red Blacks. Like, if that offense is going to get anything going, I think it needs to come in large part due to the run game. So I always have him as a cautionary pick because as a cheaper option, I think there's the potential there for a huge game from Flanders if he's in the lineup. But you never know, right? You never know what that offense is going to do or when they'll finally get things going. If they do, I would hope in a 14-game season we'll eventually see a strong game from them at some point. But it's a cautionary tale with Timothy Flanders. And if he's not ready to go, it could be Brendan Galanders, $2,500, so as cheap as you can go at running back. That could get the start. And, I would assume probably similar production to Timothy Flanders. I don't think you're going to get anything spectacular out of him. But as I said before, running backs have disappointed a lot unless you've really hit the nail on the head with one of the top two options in the first couple games of the season. So if you just want to save money and spend it at wide receiver, at quarterback, maybe you take a Brandon Go-Anders. Again, he's not going to put you up a ton of points, I would think. But if he is the starting running back, he should get you maybe around a 5 to 7 points for a $2,500 salary. That's certainly an option there if you think it's going to be worth it to move the rest of that money elsewhere in your lineup. And then finally, the one option that I'm kind of suggesting to stay away from because I'm sure there's some intrigue in him. He's a cheaper option. He's a backup running back, but he's mostly the return guy, and that's Chris Rainey in BC. There's always the temptation there. He's such a dynamic player that he could, strike a big return, pick you up big return yards. Maybe he gets involved in the offense a little. They've tried to involve him a little bit in each game, but all that production has led to his best performance being 7.8 points so far this year and an average of 5.5. So I get that the point that the take on Chris Rainey is, maybe it's a money saver there, but I think I like some of the other options I've mentioned. I like an Ante Milanovic leader at a cheaper price point than I do for Chris Rainey in week number 4. So those are kind of the options I'm looking at running back right now. Obviously, there's a lot of question marks based on injury reports, depth charts, who's going to start, who's not for each of these teams. So make sure you check those out later in the week as well. I'll have an update on Friday based on the depth charts that we do have already at that point, and the injury reports up until that point as well. And of course, I'll tweet out anything notable in that regard that I haven't already covered in videos throughout the week. So those are your running back options for week number 4. I like Stanback. I like Harris if he's going to play. I'm cautiously optimistic on pretty much everybody else and staying away from Chris Rainey. Stay tuned for the wide receiver and the defense previews. Those will be out tomorrow on Thursday. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, again, check out the quarterback preview I released earlier today as well, talking through all the options at that position. So yeah, check those out. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. And stay tuned for the continuation of the Week 4 preview out tomorrow. And have yourself a wonderful day. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.